Hey everyone, Colin from Gaming Through the Ages here. You know, a few months ago, I played through Ratchet and Clank for the PS4. This was my first Ratchet and Clank game, and I came off of it thinking, it's good. I liked it, but it wasn't amazing. It wasn't something that made me like, I have to play the next Ratchet and Clank game. But getting Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart at 50% off, that made me want to get it because I've heard amazing things about this game. So I figured, why not give it a spin, see what the PS5 can do, and ask myself, does this game improve enough to make me a Ratchet and Clank fan? Let's get into it. First off, I should say that you don't need to have played the last game to understand this one. How do I know? Because this game isn't just a sequel to the PS4 remake. It is simultaneously that and a sequel to the other mainline Ratchet and Clank games, which I did not know until I looked it up later. That being said, while I'm sure that there were things that went over my head, I never once found myself confused or feeling like I needed to play the previous games to understand a scenario or piece of dialogue. This game is a great starting off point for the series, I assure you. The game begins with a parade to celebrate Ratchet and Clank's heroic deeds. At the end of the parade is a present that Clank developed as a surprise for Ratchet, a Dimensionator. Apparently, Ratchet is the only Lombax in this dimension, and Clank wants to help Ratchet to find the rest of the Lombaxes. Dr. Nefarious strikes, though, and seizes control of the Dimensionator, wanting to exist in a universe where he's the one who wins all of the time. And that dimension is a bleak one. There's no Dr. Nefarious, rather, we have an Emperor Nefarious, who has an absolutely massive army of robots who are all programmed to love him. However, it's not just Nefarious who has a dimensional counterpart. Every character from Ratchet and Clank's universe has one, including Ratchet and Clank. We meet Rivet very early on, Ratchet's counterpart, and this universe's only Lombax. She finds Clank laying on the ground and rescues him, although not without some mistrust. Rivet is a resistance fighter, one of the select few who are fighting against Nefarious's tyrannical rule. I absolutely love her as a character. She's smart and sassy, but more importantly, she feels like a real character. There's a scene near the end of the game where she's faced with the revelation that someone who she considered to be a friend actually caused her life-altering trauma, and she really has to work through it. She responds the way a person would to a betrayal before finally coming around to forgiveness. And this is great character writing. And Jennifer Hale is an absolutely magnificent voice actress in this role, and I can't praise the performance enough. I really hope that we see more of Rivet in later games because I loved this character so much. The counterpart to Clank is another former warbot gone rogue, a young ladybot named Kit. Ratchet meets her on the planet of Savali, where she's training with some monks. It's revealed on that planet that she's trying to control her aggression, because when she lets go of control, she can turn into a huge warbot capable of destroying anything and everything, as she almost does to Ratchet. This leads her to a perpetual sense of low self-confidence and self-esteem. She constantly claims that she's not a good partner, and Ratchet has to work to break through her shell so that they can form a real team. It's really heartwarming to see her work through her feelings of self-doubt and learn how to trust other people. While the game is called Ratchet and Clank, you don't really play as the titular duo for most of the game. Instead, you'll be playing interchangeably as either Rivet and Clank or Ratchet and Kit. They play absolutely identically, down to the weapon loadout and upgrades, so the only difference is the levels that they get to explore. From a character development perspective, I really like this. While I'm sure we would get some good dialogue from exploring the new dimension with Ratchet and Clank, there's simply more new dialogue the developers can write when you have the two pairs consisting of an old character and a new character each. This both sheds light on the old character by exploring how they would approach a complete stranger, and gives us a good way to see the new character shine. When the two pairs finally unite and Ratchet and Clank become a pair again, and Rivet teams up with Kit, we feel both a sense of reunion with Ratchet and Clank, and a sense of wonder. We know Rivet and Kit independently, But how will they interact with each other? Seeing Rivet and Kit explore their own personal dynamics and forge into a team like Ratchet and Clank is an absolute joy, and their dialogue is some of the best written in the whole game. The game has some nice twists on other old characters too, although I don't want to show off too much here. One that I simply can't walk away from mentioning is how they changed Mr. Zurkon. Mr. Zurkon was a favorite of mine in the last game, mostly because of his ultra-violent personality. In this game, they make Mr. Zurkon into a peace-loving bartender, and I don't know why, but I find that absolutely hilarious. His son, Zurkon Jr., is the arena announcer and the one who does previews and ads for all of the weapons. Mr. Zurkon's wife, Mrs. Zurkon, serves as the game's weapons vendor, and they've written her as an old Southern belle that is quite excellently done. Now that I've talked about the characters, though, let me dive into gameplay for a bit. The core gameplay is identical to that of the Ratchet & Clank remake for PS4, so go see that review if you want my overview of that. However, there are some changes that make this game feel more immersive and more fun. The single most important improvement they made was the change to the Raritanium System. In the previous game, you got Raritanium mostly through random drops from enemies, meaning that you had no real control over the speed at which you could upgrade your weapons. In this game, Raritanium becomes a resource that you scour the map and explore for. The levels are way more open-ended, giving them an almost open-world feel at times, complete with other collection side quests. On the map, you'll find nodes of Raritanium. Some of them are easy to get and are just lying out in the open, while others require you to do a bit of platforming or maneuvering to get access. It's a great way to reward the player for a sense of exploration. In this way, exploration is tied to player power. Another new feature are pocket dimensions. These are small little platforming levels scattered throughout the levels, but atmospherically cordoned off, that rewards you with a piece of armor or equipment upon finishing it. If I had to compare them to something, they'd be like the voids in Blue Fire, a real highlight feature of that game if you remember my review of it. In Blue Fire, voids were meant to be the ultimate platforming challenge, while pocket dimensions are very easy. I can't help but feel that it's a bit of a shame. They're completely optional outside of one or two, and they're designed to be dedicated platforming challenges. The developers really could have tried to give us a few pocket dimensions that actually made platforming difficult, and they didn't. That being said, what is there is fun to go through, and especially the last couple, they provided me with a huge sense of speed and spectacle. So I did have my fun with this feature, no doubt. I just think it could have been improved on a little bit. In general, I found the level design to be quite entertaining. Standouts are the planet of Savali, where you have to use the rocket boots to move around at lightning speed, and Blizar Prime, where you have to jump in between dimensions to navigate past obstacles. Quite a few of the levels have side content as well, which complements the more open-ended level design. Typically, I'm not one to go for all of the collectibles, but I did hunt down all 12 Lombax records on Savali because I wanted to know more about the past of the Lombaxes. There were a lot of good Easter eggs in these diaries, so I highly recommend seeking them out, if only for your own amusement. The only bad thing that I have to say about the level design comes down really to enemy design. The bosses in this game are just bullet sponges with a few beams that you gotta dodge here and there. There's almost no boss variety, and I can't remember any of the bosses except for the last one. The game seems to know that their bosses are uninspired, because later in the game, they'll just throw 2 or 3 of the same ones at you in order to up the challenge, instead of creating new bosses that would actually provide you with something new to conquer. In a lot of ways, though, this game just feels good to play. And when I say feel, I mean it. This is the first game I've played, besides Astro's Playroom, that makes use of the adaptive triggers. A lot of guns have different functions depending on if you push a trigger button down halfway or all of the way, much like how the GameCube triggers were pressure sensitive. On the way down, the trigger gives you a bit of resistance, giving your shots an extra sense of oomph. This is particularly noticeable when using rapid-fire weapons, when the trigger keeps pushing against you, but you hold it down, making it feel like it's an automatic fire gun. At least, I think that's what it's trying to emulate. I haven't actually shot an automatic rifle. But the point is that it increases the immersion greatly. I will say that after a few days of using the full adaptive triggers, I was feeling a bit of pain in my right index finger. Luckily, the game offers a huge amount of accessibility options, including lowering the intensity of the adaptive triggers or even turning them off completely. Time will tell if the adaptive triggers are something that I get used to, or if it's something I will only enjoy using for short bursts. But for now, this game offers a model of giving the player control over a feature to best suit their physical comfort level. This is the case for a lot of other things too, including one of my favorite accessibility options, increasing the size of subtitles. More games should have this. I have to say, I was really surprised by this game. I loved this game. The storytelling is incredibly well written. The humor is fantastic. The gameplay is a lot of fun. The graphics, the worlds. I came out of this wanting to play the rest of the Ratchet and Clank series. I consider myself a Ratchet and Clank fan now. If you have a PS5, you have to get this game. It's a short little romp, maybe take you a weekend, maybe a little bit more, but it is such a fun time. Well, guys, thanks so much for watching. If you really liked this video, or maybe you only kind of liked this video, please go ahead, give me a like, leave me a comment. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to. We'd love to have you. And I will see you next week for more content from Gaming Through the Ages.